Cindy, and welcome to Pearls of Liberty, April 17th, 2011, which happens to be Palm Sunday. So, happy Palm Sunday. We again want to thank our friend Dr. Noah. We have a segment from him, so stay tuned for that. And we want to begin this morning by a discussion of something that Alex Jones was touching on this week regarding the 6-year-old who was groped by the TSA, which kind of turned into a broader scope of questions regarding the TSA and also regarding the fairness of coverage even by institutions like Google. So Don, would you comment on?
Sure, right. We did mention this story last week, but what came out further this week was that the Google searches on the story were being controlled. One of the things Alex did was he did a test to see if searches with TSA in them would go to the top of the search list, as is pretty much anything whenever he plugs a search term. And those two ones did not. The first one he thought might have been a little too complex because it was 6-year groped, something like
6-year-old.
6-year. I don't know if it was 6-year-old, but something like 6-year groped, something like that. It was a little bit complex. And the second one, and that didn't show up. The second one, followed a day or so later, was TSA lied. Very simple. Did not show up. So that's pretty strong evidence that the TSA is paying for or somehow getting control of search terms that include TSA in them. So we encourage you to check that out, and also just consider how controlled our society and information is, even on the internet, which is supposed to be information neutral. When you're relying on a search engine like Google, you may not be getting what you think you're getting. And there are some other search engines, of course, that we like to use. I like to use Starting Page or Start Page, two different things. Starting Page is HTTPS. It's secure HTTP. But that feeds searches into Google, so you may end up with the same kind of thing. So we encourage you to experiment, try other things, but realize how controlled things are getting, and especially the TSA, because this is a big, big hot button with the powers that be. We saw last Thanksgiving when the TSA was about to push this mandatory grope thing. They pulled off at the last minute because the story had gone so viral. Drudge was getting a lot of exposure in bringing that story to the forefront about the TSA hands down the pants grope. So we really see that they pulled back because they didn't want to allow the people to come together and galvanize against this growing police state. So we encourage you to be aware of that situation, continue to monitor, and use every opportunity you can to help other people understand what's going on. If you're traveling, I would put a sticker on your badge, a V sticker on your luggage, something like that. That may be too out there for some, but that's something that I would personally want to do to help increase awareness of the growing police state.
Well, that's all good. One issue regarding the 6-year-old that I don't think we mentioned last week, probably many of you don't want the hassle of being groped. I hate it. I've had the pat down 3 or 4 times now, and I'm not afraid to fly, but I confess to getting nervous now when I go to the airport at the thought of having to decline the naked scanner and receive the pat down. I just would like to let you know, if you believe that by acquiescing and going through the naked scanner, you're protecting yourself from being noticed or the pat down. The 6-year-old who was groped had already passed through the naked scanner. And I'm not really sure what the issues were that they decided to give her the pat down following that. But going through the naked scanner is not necessarily going to prevent you from being patted down. So I say, refuse the scanner and go for the pat down. And if everybody refused the scanner, things would change. And it's not against the law to refuse the scanner. You might feel as if it puts you in a position of being under more suspicion. Too bad. You're not carrying anything illegal, right? You're not going to blow the plane up. Get the pat down.
So to clearly emphasize, the naked scanners are dangerous. Radiation exposure that causes cancer. We're going to talk a little bit more about the radiation exposure from Fukushima. We don't want to lose sight of the fact that any worker that exposes themselves to radiation is increasing their risk of cancer and just general decline of health. Policemen that hold the radar gun have a higher rate of testicular cancer because that's where they hold the thing. So these risks are real, and if you're a frequent traveler, they're even more important for you to consider in terms of your health as well as the growing police state.
What a world, as the witch in The Wizard of Oz said when she was dying. My beautiful ugliness. Another topic this week is the fact that Lou Dobbs was a guest on Alex Jones, and I did not have the privilege of hearing that interview, but Don did, so I know he has some things to say about it.
Sure, it's definitely worth covering because Lou Dobbs is such a well-known figure and comes across so reasoned and not any hype involved. He does refer to on the left, on the right, tends to assume that the false left-right paradigm is true, but he has a clear understanding of, from his own research and digging into the news, reporting on the news as a mainline CNN anchor for years and years. He delved into the North American Union, what that's all about, what the Bilderberg Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, all of that. He understands that. He knows that that's real. He understands that the Congress people are bought off by this globalist system. So to hear him talk about these things in the way that he does is well worth listening to or sharing with someone that may not be aware of this or may think that this is all just craziness. Lou Dobbs just comes across as being so reasoned, and you can just search Lou Dobbs, Alex Jones, and the clip will come up, and then you'll be able to share that. So, worth pointing out.
Another very interesting guest that Alex had on his show this week has an issue with the possibility of needing to leave the country because of threats to his life, and that's Wayne Madsen. And although I did listen to the entire interview and was very impressed, I know that Don has more in-depth understanding than I do, so he's going to discuss that.
For those that don't know, Wayne Madsen is an extremely dedicated, conscious journalist in terms of exposing what's really going on in our country. He's worked in the NSA and was in the military, so he understands intelligence with that background, and he knows the extent to which our intelligence, what we would consider our government, that has been co-opted by forces that are really unconstitutional. So he sees the subterfuge that's going on and exposes it. So Wayne was in the process of doing investigation on the Chicago political machine as it relates to Obama and his CIA connections that have been in existence from a long, long time. From those that have researched it, they see that this has been a part of his life almost constantly from his childhood on. Wayne was doing research on that in Chicago and got death threats from credible sources that he verified were real. These death threats were coming from the administration. So those of us that have been following this stuff for a while know about, in the Clinton administration, the Clinton death list, that kind of thing. There were so many people that disappeared. Wayne doesn't want that to have that happen to him, so he said he will be leaving the country within a few weeks. Other people that are patriots that have come to the level of understanding that Wayne has, like Bob Chapman, have also had to leave decades ago. So this is very, very real, and something that we want to ask you to pray for, support these people in whatever way you can. This also raises a further question that we wanted to talk about that has to do with people like Alex Jones and others, maybe Jeff Rense, maybe no other names come immediately to mind, but you might wonder, well, why aren't they dead? Why haven't they been forced to flee? And the answer that Alex always gives is that if they killed him, it would only highlight everything that he's done. It always advises guests to get out what they know and not try to hide it, because once they get it out, that actually makes it less likely that they will be killed, because the information is already out there. Then they just have to try to figure out how to manage it, how to marginalize the person, whatever. So that is one of the things that happens constantly, is people wonder about, well, why aren't these people that are exposing the truth killed? You get a certain level of visibility and then you get killed. Another thing that happens is that you have different camps within the liberty and truth movements of people that think it's all due to this group, or all the problems are all due to that group. One thing Alex does is constantly say it's a group of evil people. It's not just one group. It's not just the Jews. It's not just the Catholics. It's not just
Masons.
the
Masons.
The Masons, another good one. Those groups are all involved. The Jesuits. Those groups are all involved, but no one group is leading it all. They all interact. It all has to do with old global banking money. The Rothschilds are huge, but they don't completely run everything. So they can't run everything. No one person can run everything. And plus, we believe that there's a demonic entity that's helping to coordinate all these human conspirators. So I believe Alex actually has a pretty good handle on how interactive and how amorphous this web of deceit is. So people that are always wanting to blame it on one group tend to think that Alex and other people like him are shifting the blame and trying to take the spotlight away from this group that they think is behind everything. So I wanted to lay that out there to help people understand that this is complex, but it's also simple. It's complex in that there's lots of groups involved, but it's simple in that we're talking about evil people that are control freaks, that have been used to controlling things for a long time, and we're into shining the light of truth. And we believe that that's where Alex and others are coming from, and encourage you not to get into infighting and this camp and that camp, and let's work together.
Yes, and in mentioning the groups that you mentioned, the Catholics, the Mormons, and so on, we are not opposed to people who are members of those ideologies. For instance, we have friends who are Catholics. We have friends who are Jewish. Not everyone in those groups participates in any kind of conspiratorial desire to take over the world. It's mostly people at the top, but those organizations have been used for a long time to achieve the goals that the controllers have, and they've managed to use a lot of organizations. At some point we're probably going to get into how, I'm not even going to say we, because I don't want to involve Don in this. I believe that many Christian groups, and I'm talking charismatic, prophetic believing, gifts of the Spirit, Christian groups, have been subject to control at the top by the global bankers. And I don't want to be on the list of people who've been killed. So I better get that story out quick, huh?
And we don't have any personal connections other than some loose associations with a few people that we think may or may not have some ties. So we don't really, well, what I want to say is we don't have any insider information, but we do want to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. And I just want to underscore what Cindy said about groups like Catholics, Jews, and Masons even. Masons, although they are secretive, a lot of the low-level or porch Masons don't even know what it's all about. It's just something that they do, and we recognize that. We recognize that really the elite are a small percentage of even these secretive groups. So, and another thing to remember is it's not as if they control everything. They're just very good at mass manipulation and psychology, and they have the resources to do it. By means of controlling the money power, they control the media. That doesn't mean that they control every word that's said, but if you look over the last decades, you will see how much more media control they have and how much more societal manipulation they can do. So we just put that out there, want to help people become aware of that as we are growing in our awareness.
Sure, and I would actually suggest that if you are Catholic and you have questions about the Catholic Church, watch Godfather 3. It is a fictional account, but the portrayal of the Bank of Rome being in some respects more vicious, more violent, and certainly more powerful than high-level mafia people is telling. It's a great account, and like I said, it's fictional, but where there's money, typically there's corruption. Rome, the Catholic Church, is one of the largest property holders, if not the largest, and one of the wealthiest corporations, if not the wealthiest. Somebody told me this week it's the wealthiest, but I haven't checked that out. But I know there's tremendous wealth there. The love of money is the root of all evil, and where there are vast sums of money, there is going to be a degree of evil. It's unfortunate. I'm not saying that all wealthy people are evil by a long stretch of the imagination. I don't believe that for a heartbeat. However, as I said, where there's a large sum of money, there's going to be some evil, and there are going to be power plays. And one great thing about Alex Jones that I tremendously respect is that he says that he will not declare anything that he can't prove. He only talks about what he can prove. So there are many people, if you are on YouTube much, you'll see there are a lot of people who want to call Alex Jones into account. Why doesn't he go after these people? Why doesn't he go after these people? As Don said, he only will talk about what he can prove. So rest assured that when you listen to Alex Jones or watch his show, everything he says is a proven fact.
But he would be the first person to say, you've got to check it out for yourself. That's why he has Document Cam, hold up documents that you search from the web. Of course, people like to say, you can't believe everything you read on the web. Well, you can't believe everything you hear from the mainstream media either. It all goes down to needing to research things for yourself, needing to correctly analyze things, needing to understand the difference between correlation and causation, and somewhat deep philosophical issues, but we need to rediscover our ability to think through things ourselves and not just eat the spoon-fed pablum that we get from the mainstream media. One little idea that I wanted to also tag on to Cindy's comments on the Roman Catholic Church, in addition to the money aspect, as with anything, it's about control. Money is just a means to that end, and another very important means in a way that that control takes shape is the vertical integration of a group. As we know, the Roman Catholic Church is very highly vertically integrated, contrasted with the equally old or older Orthodox Church, which has a much looser, less hierarchical government structure, although it's global. So the way that a group is organized says a lot about how it can be used for control. So we're just personally leery of groups that tend to have authority centralized, and we believe that you want to be a part of groups that allow greater individual freedom and mutual respect and real relationship, as opposed to a command and control type of an organization.
Caution, think for yourselves. Don't be easily led. I know if you're a Christian, Jesus called us sheep, and there are all kinds of teachings based on that we're supposed to follow and be gentle and not ask questions. And the Bible is filled with truth and tension. So that is true. However, it needs to be balanced. The innocent as doves needs to be balanced with the wise as serpents. It's not just one or the other. So we again have a segment with Dr. Noah, and we'd like to introduce that now. And I just want to mention, in case there's anyone watching this who's sick or hurting or even sad, we laugh at times when we're with Dr. Noah. We're not laughing because we're not serious, or because we don't feel pain. Dr. Noah's a doctor because he feels pain, and he's there to help people overcome pain. The concept of laughter in the face of things that are scary or painful or threatening is, at least from where I come from, is Psalm 2, wherein it says that he who sits in the heavens laughs. It talks about all kinds of threats that are people rising up against God, wanting to overthrow his kingdom, his rulership. And it's he who sits in the heavens laughs. In other words, laughter can be about victory, and we do believe in victory over disease, over poverty. We believe that Jesus has provided for a way, and today is Palm Sunday. We won't get into that a lot, but just the frame of reference for the laughter, please don't be hurt by it. It's intended to represent victory, and you can have victory over pain and over disease.
Right. One of the things that the laughter is directed towards helping to put things in perspective. And Dr. Noah is, as we are, but him even more so, in a battle with the greatest monopoly on earth, as he puts it, which is the American Medical Association. And it's not only that, it's a mindset that's been created by that. So putting that in perspective, what you're talking about is truth overcoming lies. So what will tend to happen in conversations with Dr. Noah is we'll tend to point out the absurdities of the medical paradigm that's most common today, which is what we call sick care and not true health care. And using those terms and emphasizing the absurdities is a way of putting things in perspective that actually helps you to gain a sense of victory. We're winning. Truth wins out over lies, and compassion wins out over the dollar or the motivation to profit. One of the things that we don't directly discuss in this conversation, we may touch on it with Dr. Noah, is the literal fallout from the Fukushima disaster, the nuclear accidents from the nuclear reactors, that radiation has now gone global to the extent that you have European agencies warning people not to eat vegetables or drink milk for some 6 months or something along those lines. These are serious warnings that are going out that you see in various places where you have standards that are not going to be compromised. Unfortunately, in the United States, what we've had is those standards just been adjusted upward. These standards that have come from things like the Chernobyl disaster, they put in markers of what levels of radiation of different isotopes would be regarded as safe. Those thresholds have just been raised so that people don't get alarmed. There's nothing, when you're herding a bunch of sheep, that you want to avoid more than panicking the sheep, because they might tend to run off in different directions and then you won't be able to herd them. So that's what we see is going on here. But I say that to put it in perspective of, well, you might say, what can we do about it anyway? And there is a lot you can do to improve your overall health that will enable you to more effectively fight against even radioactivity that's introduced. This is something that happens constantly. The low-level background radiation is just a whole lot higher now. So whenever you learn in terms of being able to better manage your own health, will increase your resistance to cancer that will inevitably happen as these levels of radiation rise up. So we encourage you to listen from that perspective, from the perspective of taking charge of your own health. Here's Dr. Noah. Welcome.
Thank you. And I think this week you wanted me to talk a little bit about IBS, which we'll talk about. But
irritable bowel syndrome.
Irritable bowel syndrome, a kind of a real challenge. I think there's about 4 to 10 million people, a million people in the United States that have this kind of disorder here. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then you're always gracious enough. I'll just go over the last week's update in terms of what's kind of going on with the science
weekly update.
So you're current. As I was talking with Cindy before we started this, is that unfortunately medicine is usually about 50 years behind the times. When there's real breakthroughs coming out, it takes about 50 years before they actually it trickles down, and that's not trickle down economics here, but trickle down to that science, goes down to where your health provider will actually institute that to actually benefit you. So there's that long delay there. And I was actually thinking the other day about, I was reading an article about, in like all wars, the last soldier who was killed in Vietnam, and what a tragedy, the war's over, and who's the last person that's going to die? Well, same type with technology. Who's the last person that's going to die when there was a solution for that problem? And that's the real, that is a big ouch. That's kind of sad. So that's why it's important, and I really feel privileged to come on your show. You would give me some great numbers. A lot of people are watching this, and that's great. So people can be informed.
You're giving us great numbers.
Well, thanks. Well, hopefully it's a mutual thing. Is that we're able to educate people, and that's the real beauty. Don being, as well as Cindy too, being really pioneers in the internet, and as people watching this too, is now we have this frontier and this for the time being, this freedom of information. How long that will last, we can talk about that another time. Is where people then can at least go to their health provider and say, hey, I watched this thing with Dr. Noah. He's talking about cell signaling, NRF2 activators, talking about P53. This is cutting edge stuff. Like P53, you correct that, no cancer. I like that.
Bravo.
Bravo. And that's why all the drug and biotech companies are moving into P53. But once again, that could be another 15, 20, 30 years. How many more people will die, or children that give this to, or younger people be given this and never have cancer? So that's the exciting thing about being current.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, like that. So let me just go a little bit over what I kind of came across, and I'm going to talk a little bit about IBS. So as we've talked about many times, and also on my TV show, we talk about no one's talking about the real issue when it comes to about sick care or health care, about the $2.5 trillion spent, and how are we going to pay for that for the elderly like that. No one ever talks about what's the real cause of the problem. The problem is how we look at the situations. And I talk about it, and in this article we'll talk about is in traditional Chinese medicine 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, the health providers or doctors were only paid when you were healthy.
Good idea.
I know. And as soon as you got sick, it stopped paying. So what was the motivation of the doctor, him or her, to do? To get you
Incentivize
well.
wellness.
Absolutely.
What kind of system do we have here?
The opposite.
Sickness, that's right. And that perpetuated. They actually make
Right.
more money the more sick you get. And in medicine's the only profession I know, any type of industrial, where they screw you up, they keep getting paid.
They have a vested interest in you being sick.
Absolutely.
Not a vested interest in
Now,
you being
they'll do a
well.
little song and dance, and Gary's here too, our great person like that. Maybe you could do us a little song here and song and dance like that. Yes, they'll say, oh no, I'm here to help. No, really the real bottom line is that they benefit from you being sick.
I got into a little online debate. I didn't mention this
Oh,
to you
good. No,
earlier.
no.
That we're just it was back and forth on Twitter, which is
Yeah,
very
right.
brief. But
Right.
but he was saying this. I was objecting to the idea that in a compassionate society we have a government mandated health care that basically institutionalizes what we've built today based on this
Yeah.
this crummy sick care model.
Well, it's a
And,
religion.
and I don't want my
Right.
my tax money. I don't want to fund a society that's going to institutionalize this sick care system. So it really is about personal responsibility,
Absolutely.
not about let's just all pool our resources and get whatever is out there now. That's not good.
Right. And we'll talk about real competition. I mean, that's supposed to be one of our foundations. There is no competition. There's a monopoly. There's
Yeah.
fascism in this.
It
And as
is.
we'll talk a little later about, but that type 2 diabetes, I mean, people are shocked. I was telling Cindy, I was telling about this patient, and I was telling her that, lots of different problems. But his wife had type 2 diabetes. I says, well, how come she's not cured? I can cure that in 3 to 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And he was shocked. What are you talking about? What kind of quack are you going to? I mean, and we'll talk about the science.
Well, the illusion is
Yeah.
that the world, if you had a cure, the world would be to pass
Oh,
through your door.
no.
But why
But
is
there's-
that?
but
Why
there's
is
a
that
whole-
false
Well,
assumption?
once again, there's a whole industry to be able to
Mhm.
create, that's a $60 billion industry. So, and as well,
Insulin.
well, not
Diabetes.
glucophage or
Yeah.
hypoglycemic agent, insulin,
Selling the devices.
selling right. 90% of diabetes is type 2. There is type 1, which is a different type of entity, and we're not talking about that, but talking about 90%. That's been proven over and over again scientifically. On my TV show, I have a nice slide from the Archives of Internal Medicine. Oh, that's a drug company journal. Oh, good, okay. So that's where their bias is. They were trying to disprove lifestyle, and guess what? They lost big time. Which system was 300% more effective, drugs or lifestyle?
I'm going to have to say lifestyle.
It was true. Which one is 3,000% more expensive, lifestyle or drugs?
Drugs.
Exactly right. And there's your answer like that.
But
There's no interest in getting well when you can get well, maybe you can call me or send me. Maybe you have a stock I can get a 3,000% return on my investment. There isn't any. Only sick care has that. And that's the bottom line. And we'll talk about the studies and studies and studies that show when they do the Super Bowl of science, lifestyle against drugs, guess who always loses?
Drugs.
So that would be like the 49ers going against the Raiders. The 49ers win 300-1.
Wow.
Yeah, no competition.
The skull and crossbones, the poison.
That's right.
I get it.
I got it. Exactly. Good. Quick. That's good. So in this article here, showing that healthful behavior is key to the healthcare system. I mean, this is like no-brainer, but at least they're starting to talk about it.
It'll cost you a little bit more money out of pocket, won't it? But you're making an investment in your health.
No, actually, there's a study from the University of Utah. For every dollar spent for prevention, how much return on your investment do you get preventing acute care trauma, which is what we have now? 1,600%. So no, this is going to
Wow.
save 1,600%. But that means that
That's
some people
amazing.
aren't going to make a lot of money for doing quackery.
Mm-hmm.
So what?
Too bad.
The
I
return
know.
is to you instead of to the
Yeah,
sick care doctors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are some of the issues until we're talking about? Overeating, lack of exercise, smoking. This is just basic 101. But once again, at least they're starting to talk about it. This is where magic always is. Weight loss drugs, and they discuss them, have potential in terms of what? Death and critical organ industry, critical organ injury. So even these quacks will even say for
I'll hold them up after you're done.
Okay, good,
So
thanks.
you can see it. You talk about the next one, then I'll hold the last one up.
So people think, oh, they go to their drug doctor and they say, okay, I know I'm fat, I'm lazy, I'm stupid, and all these type of things. So, but I'm going to go to someone that's even more
Are those
stupid.
symptoms?
Exactly. Who's even more stupid because he or she's a quack. He's going to give me a magic pill for losing weight, and the studies show how much did you lose? 4 pounds versus doing nothing. Costing, once again, thousands of dollars and causing all these kind of problems like that. Now, not to get too personal here, but Cindy's just gone on a natural type of cleansing type of diet, eating better, and what's happened?
I've lost over 25 pounds.
Effortlessly.
Yeah, since in about...
No struggle, nothing. Have I caused any liver damage?
Not that I'm
Have I
aware
caused you to
of.
go to the hospital?
I feel great.
I'm a loser.
My organs are healthier.
If I could send her to the hospital, I'd have made another $100,000. What a deal! So here we go. This just came out. This is from a very, very liberal, wild organization, the Department of Health and Human Services. Oh, that's the government. Talk about anybody that doesn't know what's going on. Well, even they came out. Medical errors account for a death every 3 minutes.
No way.
You got it? 3 minutes. The medical profession murders someone every 3 minutes. This is what the government. So multiply that by about 3, and that's about 300%, and that's exactly what probably the truth is. So that's what's out there. Of course, you're not going to hear about that. You're not going to hear that on the news that you watch. We're definitely going to watch it on American Idol. So that's what's kind of going on here. Let's see, nearly half of the U.S. meat is now tainted not only with bacteria, but the resistant kind. And when people wonder why they're always getting sick, 50% have what's called MRSA. Because of the quacks, use antibiotics for what? Colds? Now, do colds? They're a virus, that's right. And does antibiotics work with viruses?
No.
No, never, ever. But then when you go see your quack, you get the antibiotics, you keep getting sick, hey, they make more money.
Aren't
Keeps them coming back.
A huge percent of sinus infections are actually viral
90% of sinus infections are either viruses or fungal. Only 10% or less are bacterial.
But they always give you
They always give it to you. Oh, it's good to not know what you're doing and screw you up because they make more money. So that's a little scare there. So what's the most prestigious medical journal in the world? These are drug doctors. New England Journal of Medicine. Now, what do they say about people going out and riding bicycles, knitting, making quilts for the American Diabetic Association? Because we want to really cure this. We already talked about it. Well, that's a joke.
Yeah.
Diet and exercise beat drugs for diabetes. Beat. That means they win. They're more effective. They cost less. New England Journal of Medicine. Now, also in this article says, it's not just one study. It's not 2 studies. It's been 4 scientific studies, one right after another. They don't even, once again, it'd be like, once again, having the 49ers play against the Pee Wee football team. I mean, why would they want to even play?
How do those studies get funded? Are there national food organizations that put together some kind of a...
No.
How did that happen?
This one happens to come from what little benefit we get from our tax dollars, which is Monday, this is from the National Institute of Health, NIH. So once again, these are very conservative type of people. They wanted to see...
You mean our taxes that go to the Federal Reserve?
Exactly, which is not a federal...
No, it's not
a
no
reserve. Exactly. It's just basically a corrupt a tool to be able to make our society not be able to function, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Don't confuse me with
We'll
facts.
talk about that tomorrow.
Don't confuse me with facts. I mean, I don't want to get facts. So I just talk about health. So that's what's out there. Now this goes along in terms of the beauty of what Cindy and Don are trying to do is that we don't have freedom and we don't have liberty anymore. So here's a mother who has an autistic child, which is a challenge. I help those type of children, very challenging, not easy, but help them. Of course, there's no drugs or surgery out there, but we spend billions of dollars pretending that we're going to help them. So
But you help them by natural means.
By natural means. And they actually do get better. Yeah, they actually get better. I mean, they're able to function better. They're able to, go back to school like that. And the other ones, all they do is they dope them up enough so that they're just drug addicts. I mean, they just walk around in a stupor. I mean, anybody can do it. I can go down to the drugstore or down to the liquor store and give a kid, a fifth of Jack Daniels, and yeah, they'll behave because they'll be drunk. They'll just be walking around, slobbering. Oh, that's what the drugs do. Oh, that's okay. They make a lot more money than the alcohol industry does, so that's what matters. So there was a trial that just happened. It was in Massachusetts, where a woman whose child had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a kind of cancer, and kind of struggled with it. Maybe this doesn't really work. So she didn't give the chemotherapy, and now they're sentencing her to 10 years in prison because of what's called manslaughter.
Wow.
Now the studies do show with younger kids that the survival, that the success rate is about 50-50 after 7 years. That's science. 50-50, that's a flip of the coin. And that's why they send this woman to jail for 10 years, because that's the great science, that she was being abusive like that. Oh, you don't like that one? How about this one? Armed agents kidnap child from mother who used holistic, oh my God, versus pharmaceuticals drugs to treat her child. So her child is, once again, goes in, gets vaccinated, whole different topic like that, starts to get really sick. Of course, the drug doctors, once again, give her lots of drugs. She said, her and the drugs are frustrated, weren't getting better. God forbid she went to some holistic type of person, was getting better, wasn't getting worse. Then the government steps in. Let's see, the Special Response Team, which is like the SWAT team, Department of Police Department, and Child Protective Service, which is a whole type of study. I mean, they could be Nazis themselves. Kicked down the door, actually had a tank that came in.
What?
Yeah, they actually had a tank present like that.
Because that mother must have been heavily armed.
Well, so I mean, that's the craziness out there. We don't have freedom, especially when it comes to your health, and that's what's so scary. You start, once again, playing around with stuff that doesn't work, that makes lots of money, and guess who has the guns?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, we all need to hang together on
That's
things
exactly
like
right.
this. If everyone takes a stand, they can't go to everybody's house and take away
That's
everybody's
right.
children.
And if
They
people
make
do,
examples of these people.
that's right. But if as Cindy and I was talking, the American Revolution wouldn't have taken place in one. That was only about 5 to 8% of the populace. Most of the people, once again, were kind of, let me just watch the kerosene lamp, burn. I don't care. And then there's another third that actually were part of, they're in favor of the British government. But those small number of people, like Cindy said, were able to act forward and make some changes there. And that's what
folks,
it takes.
we are not a democracy.
No.
If we wait until 50% or more want change, it ain't going to
Well,
ever
we're
happen.
actually a representative democracy. We vote people in to be able to make a decision.
Right, and it's based on principles of freedom and leadership.
Right.
So that one of the things that discourages me most about people that are starting to wake up, they want to, and it's great to try to encourage others to vote and get involved, but it's not about a majority ruling. It's about the individual liberty being protected,
Exactly.
so that we have we don't have this imposed thing on us that we have to obey what the majority wants us to do. We have the individual freedom to choose.
Well, and the Founding Fathers had the wisdom enough to understand that democracy could be very fascist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because just as we were joking before we came on, I was working with Don and used some natural approaches to make you healthy. But we're kind of joking, that's what all brainwashing is about. That's about mind control. You're able to control the majority of people, they'll go along, even though, so the Founding Fathers...
Called TV.
It's called TV and mass media.
That's why they call it programming.
Exactly, they're programming, exactly right. So they try to understand is that they don't want a democracy because that can become very fascist. They want to protect the minority, and that's why they had a democratic,
Representative democracy,
right?
Republic.
Yeah, Republic, thank you. That's words. So IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, maybe Cindy will share a little bit. Devastating type of problem. Boy, this can be just, miserable. There's some studies showing that it increases your chance of colorectal cancer, which is #2 cancer after lung cancer from smoking and stuff. Devastating. But even if you didn't have that, patients have had miserable lives. So more recently, and you'll be able to check this out on Don and Cindy's, I'm sure they'll upload that onto YouTube, but a young guy is in his 20s, actually I'd seen him about a year ago, and I can't say cure because only drug doctors, oh that's right, they never cure, but they're the ones that can say that. But they came in, I just basically fortified his health, and his IBS went away, so it was really good. So then 2 or 3 years go by, and of course he goes back to where he was, and then he thought, well, because going to see Dr. Noah, my insurance doesn't pay for it, so I'll just go to the quacks who, society pays for it, and it doesn't work. And that's exactly what happens. Years and years went by beforehand, and then I helped him. And then after he went back on it, it didn't help him. Then he eventually came back in, and you can see the testimony. In 16 days, IBS is 80% better. So what?
Wow.
Actually, he started to kind of cry because you can imagine, young guy in his 20s like
Absolutely.
this. Socially, his life was miserable. Try going on a date where you have to know where a bathroom is, and in an instant you have to
Sure.
run to the bathroom and go number 2 because that's what you're about. You have blood, you have mucus, you have this frequent type of cramping, irritation,
terrible pain.
Exactly. And everywhere you go, when you drive in your car, you can actually become anxious because you don't know if it hits you. What are you going to do? You're driving down the road. Where's the bathroom? So that's to me, that's even more devastating than some of the other type of problems like that. 16 days, 80% better. Yeah. Have any of your quack doctors call me and tell me like that.
That's great.
Now, of course,
What's the key to that? Is it about restoring intestinal flora?
absolutely,
Or,
dealing with inflammation, helping, of course, deal with the problem at it, eating bad food, eating things that irritate you like that, that causes a
helping them
problem.
recognize what works
See,
and what
if
doesn't.
I punch you, that's the cause of the problem. Now, I could give you lots of drugs that numb the pain, but I'm still punching.
That's fun for you, isn't it?
Well, it is fun. But the punching,
I get a handle on it now.
yeah, the punching keeps going on, but you've taken the drug, taking it aside. So what I do is I get to the cause of the problem. Take the punching away, you don't take drugs. Because that's what they do. That's what they do. They gave you steroids. Oh, that's right. Barry Bonds just is going to go to jail for 10 years because he took steroids and lied about it. Why is that? Because, that causes harm. That kills people.
Steroids do.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a modern athlete is just a gladiator. The reason why they're so upset, because why would they worry? Drug doctors give out cortisone and kill people every day.
Absolutely.
That's right. It's an investment. If they give them the cortisone, they're not going to give their $35 million back that they're paying this gladiator. So it's all about money. That's why they're concerned about that.
Wow.
Whereas the other system is, hey, I make more money. I'll give you steroids. Doesn't work. Screws you up. Makes you worse. Now, I have a person that works for me. She didn't know me at the time, had IBS. Of course, the quacks went, gave her steroids, gave her all this crap that didn't work. Then they have fun with saying, oh, I'm having too much fun. Don, you're the surgeon. You need to take some money. So I'm going to send you her over there. You'll make your $100,000. Cha-ching! Nice. Cut her all up, right?
Wow.
Here she
It's
is.
really
a young,
tragic.
It's
She's
tragic.
she's how old is she now?
I can't say it. She's in her
She's
early
young
20s
woman,
or so.
Beautiful young
And
woman.
now, of course, she doesn't have $100,000. No one has $100,000. It's put on, once again, the credit card, so Security, Medicare, Medi-Cal, and every 8 weeks she has to go in for a $20,000 dilation thing for the rest of her life.
Wow.
What a deal!
Shocking.
So that doctor's just saying, yeah, $20,000, that means I could get my Mercedes, because every 8 weeks I make $20,000. Cha-ching! Yeah, don't ever go and look over here with what Don and Cindy or Dr. Noah's talking about. Go over here. Oh, that's right. That's why we're busted. We don't have any money because we keep, once again, allowing these quacks to do these things that cost a lot of money,
That's right.
have no benefits. We talked about Dr. Garson. Oh, he must be wild and crazy like Dr. Noah. Oh, that's right. He's only a medical doctor, past president of the University of Virginia Medical School. What does he say? His colleagues are criminals. Over 50%,
Absolutely.
$1.2 trillion is fraud, doesn't work, is voodoo.
Another aspect of all of this.
Do you really
is
want to
that-
know how I feel about this?
Yeah. I'll give you another button
Oh,
presser.
good. Okay, good.
There is an addictive quality to the punch.
It is.
You get used to being punched, and you don't feel right if you're not punched.
Exactly
Is that
right. That's right. Exactly
Yeah.
right. You get into, just like a drug addict. You get into this pattern where now you have this devastating, destructive lifestyle, and now you're caught in it.
Yeah.
Well, you need to be careful because Dr. Gerson was poisoned.
I know. I got
Dr.
it.
Gerson was poisoned once and survived.
Right.
And then he was poisoned a second time and died.
That's right.
So we
there's somebody
regularly
who
pray
doesn't
for
like
people
this.
that we know that are leaders in the Liberty and Truth movement, and
Well, and as I tell you,
because this is a real fight.
Well, I have some history too. My great grandfather on my mother's side was a French resistance fighter, and I really even back then when I was a little kid, not aware like that.
Excellent.
He understood that that's what they needed to do. Most of the people that were occupied just were sat there and just said, "Oh, please, Nazis, do this to me." He said, "F you, I'm getting my gun, and he was out, basically doing what had to be done. Now, he got caught, the SS executed him right on the spot. But I mean, that's where I come from, and that's where I need to be. Because I have 2 daughters.
That's where you are.
That's right. I don't want my daughters to be in, for me to be quiet, for people to be mutilated. Once again, let's go over that again. The United States government states, once again, this isn't about opinions, about I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat or a Libertarian, you like blue, I like green, I like the 49ers, you like the Raiders.
That's a false debate.
Well, that's a false debate.
That's a diversion.
Death! You don't get any worse than that. Murder! 1 person every 3 minutes by these quacks. That's what we're dealing with here.
Astounding.
So just like, in terms of, these other types of, factions, people, and like Cindy said, people have to start stepping forward and at least talking about it and making some changes.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
Happy Palm Sunday.
Well, guess who was the radical person? Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
Talk about being radical. Man, he said, the high priest, you guys are all quacks. You don't know nothing about spirituality. You don't know anything about the hereafter. You're just in there because it's a nice little pleasant job, making lots of money off other people, and making money, exactly.
Must have been just a coincidence that he overturned those money changers tables right before they turned on him, huh?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought they were trying to do some therapy by crucifying him. I thought that was some kind of attraction technique.
Something like that.
Oh, and the side effect, he was died. So that's exactly right. When you start to step out like that, that's what you're associated with.
That's right.
Jesus Christ and great type of people that stood against
Freedom fighters.
Like the freedom fighters. That's why we stay in here today. Otherwise, we'd still be under British rule, because that's what happened. People once again sit on their butts.
This country is supposed to be about deciding for yourself, making your own decisions, being informed. So get involved, be informed, and be free.
And next time I'll really share with you how I feel about things.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
We'll look forward to that.
Thanks.
Well, again, thank you, Dr. Noah. And Don and I are both in his program. I happen to have lost about 25 pounds. And remember, when you're watching, video adds 20 pounds. We're much thinner than we look, really. So we'd like to move into our Pearl Culture segment. And Don found a treasure this week on Netflix Watch Instantly. We've probably mentioned before that we don't really watch television, except for The Simpsons and a couple other things that are mostly replays from years ago. But this week on Netflix, Don found a program called Lie to Me, and it is excellent, and he has a little bit to say about it.
Lie to Me is, I think the actor's name is Tim Roth, and we saw him in a couple of movies not that long ago. I think the one that has to do with the piano, his name is a number, and he's this great piano player. Another one is called Deception, and we might have even talked about that film. But this is a television show, and in the show, he is a consultant to police departments and federal investigators, etc., when they are trying to find out if one of their witnesses is telling the truth in sensitive situations that people want to know, have an independent assessment outside of the court system to know whether somebody is really telling the truth or not. So what happens with this expert on facial expressions is you learn a lot about some of the ways to help us know whether somebody is lying. Different things like this apparently means somebody might not be telling the truth. Different micro expressions. And the show is a real learning experience. And like I said, it's well written. You usually have a couple different things happening at the same time. The other characters are interesting, but one of our key areas of interest is truth and deception or lies. And this show falls right in there, and we think you'll enjoy it, so we recommend it.
Sure, it's very entertaining as well, and we are interested in truth, whether people are telling the truth or not. So we haven't done an in-depth study of body language, but we have this book, Amazing Face Reading, has some information in it regarding body language, but it's primarily about determining what a person is like based on their facial features. And it sounds kind of out there, I realize, but it is a research-based book. The author, who is Mac Fulfer, is an attorney, and he studied this the faces of people and what they might mean in order to become better at jury selection. So it's a very interesting concept, very interesting book.
Right, that book talks about things like people with big noses, people with big lips, people with faces shaped a certain way, and we've all tend to think about these things somewhat subconsciously, but the book really nails it down, and I just wanted Cindy to mention that book because it's something that she's had for years and I learned about from her, and we tie that in with our interest in personality theory, and it really also seems to tie in with when you're talking about facial expressions and truthfulness. These are just things about humans that make us interesting and unique and just a part of our repertoire in helping each other understand the world. We just wanted to share that with you.
One other film that we saw this week was The Reflecting Pool, and that is a 9/11 film, and it was independently made. You can tell that it's independently made, but it's really quite good in many respects. It's a good dramatization.
Right, we enjoyed it. The premise of the film is, here is a filmmaker who comes from an Eastern Bloc or Soviet country and has been in tyranny, and he's so glad to be in America where he has freedom of speech, and he doesn't want to believe that there really is a cover-up going on, but he gets asked to look into the events of 9/11, and this is a fictional story, but in the fictional story various important things are pointed out, and whether or not he's going to include them and how much research he needs to do, and it even discusses things like Building 7, and they talk with the person who employs this filmmaker to do the research, says, well, we can't talk about that because nobody knows about that. Well, then there's a whole discussion about that. There's all kinds of bits of evidence that you might be able to watch and might feel less threatened by if it's in this context of a fictional story, even though, like I said, the evidence that is presented, it's true. So we think it's a well done, although it's not professionally acted, it isn't badly done, and we think it's worth watching. So that is Reflecting Pool.
And we gave it 4 stars. Just as a little hint, if you use Netflix Watch Instantly, you're probably aware of this already. We haven't really found a bad movie that is rated 4 stars outside of special interest movies. Like, for instance, anime. Our son told us that the reason all the anime movies have 4 or 5 stars is because only people who love anime watch them. So filter out the special interest films, and it's hard to go wrong with a 4 star. Another one that was probably a 3.5, but we may have rated it a 4, was The Joneses with David Duchovny and Demi Moore. And one of my favorite comedies is Fun with Dick and Jane. And in some respects, this is kind of an inversion of Fun with Dick and Jane, because rather than stepping outside of the system, they are right in the center of the system that's greed-driven and market-driven and so on.
Right, the film is the Joneses, kind of associated with the phrase keeping up with the Joneses, and what these people are is they are early adopters. These are people that have the latest thing before anybody else does. And in this case, it's basically all contrived, totally contrived. It's not even a real family. They are a marketing unit that sell to the children, sell to their age group, the parents sell to their age group, the golfing buddies, etc. And they get people to spend their money and dig their neighbors into a financial hole. So that's how they succeed. It's a really, it's funny, but it's also kind of black comedy in the sense that it's making a serious point about our society. The sad thing is about our society that you don't even really have to pay people to do this. They do it naturally. Everybody thinking that they are somehow more successful or somehow more a leader by having the latest and greatest. And there's all kinds of ways that happens. I guess iPads are one of the latest ones. We don't have an iPad yet. We're proud of it. We do have our iPhones.
No, I want one. Another film we saw is Absolute Power with Gene Hackman, directed by Clint Eastwood. A film about, hold on to your hats, Washington corruption.
Yes. The film has Clint Eastwood playing a cat burglar who happens to be a witness to a serious crime involving the President of the United States, played by Gene Hackman, everybody's favorite scoundrel. And you do see how corruption plays out in fictional story, of course, but there's questions of conscience by the people that are helping the president and covering up the crime. There's the criminal, the cat burglar, doing the honorable thing, relationship with his daughter. One of the comments about this movie that I thought made it interesting is this is a thriller, but it's a thriller in which you care about the characters. So we enjoyed it from that standpoint. It's well directed, well acted, and we think you'll enjoy it.
And Don saw Dietrich Bonhoeffer documentary this week. I watched about 20 minutes. It's very good.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer is somebody that we, or I, to speak for myself, I believe every Christian should know about this man. And I had been wanting to watch the documentary film about his life for a long time. I do know something about it. I think I own the book Discipleship, which is by Bonhoeffer. I'm not sure. I read it, maybe parts of it, years ago. So I know something about his life. And basically, this is a man that became a Christian and a leader in the Christian community in Germany as Nazism came into power with the rise of Hitler. But the very interesting thing about Bonhoeffer was before that happened, when Nazism was still in its incipient form, Bonhoeffer visited America and spent time in black churches and churches that were really outside of the European paradigm of the state church. These were churches that back in those days were much more open about political involvement, and in which the church was a vehicle to bring people together to make social stands that might be contrary to what the government wanted. So Bonhoeffer carried this new understanding of the church into Nazi Germany and began to lead a seminary of people that eventually was cut off by the state. But he very clearly saw Hitler for what he was and ended up being a part of the plot to assassinate Hitler and was killed because of that. And many Christians might have trouble with somebody going to that level of involvement, but one of the things that Dietrich Bonhoeffer believed was that being a Christian means being completely involved in your society, not somebody that sits over separate and isolated, but somebody that is involved and makes a difference because of the conscience that God quickens as He lives inside of you. As a teacher, Dietrich Bonhoeffer taught his students that when you read the Bible, God is speaking to you directly. So that's the kind of faith that we try to live and that we want to encourage others to live, is really seek God about how you're supposed to be involved and be the conscience that our society so badly needs today. So I do recommend learning more about Dietrich Bonhoeffer and do recommend the documentary film about his life.
And don't fear evil. Remember, he who sits in the heavens laughs. Another film that we saw is The 10th Man with Anthony Hopkins. It's an older film. Anthony Hopkins was markedly younger when this was made. I believe it was made in 1988. It's a post-World War II for the most part. It begins during World War II film showing how people cope in times of pressure and times of transition. Very moving film for me. I enjoyed it. And it's about nobility, not birth nobility, but behaving in a noble manner.
It's interesting how it gets there, because it starts out with Anthony Hopkins playing this character in prison when the Nazis come through into this French town and take over. They round up prisoners, and every 10th person is killed. Anthony Hopkins is very wealthy and wants to pay somebody to die for him, and that is in fact what happens, because he does draw the X that means that he's going to die, but somebody else dies in his place so that they can give this money from Anthony Hopkins' character to their family. And what happens after that is very interesting. I won't give the whole movie away, but Anthony Hopkins ends up being a servant with his identity unknown, living and working in the house that used to belong to him. So, of course, Anthony Hopkins is a very good actor, one of my favorites, and I enjoyed the character development in this film that really is about courage and truth. So we recommend that, The 10th Man.
Sure, it's a beautiful film. It's somewhat obscure because Don was unable to find it on IMDb. We watched it on Netflix Watch Instantly. So there are some great little treasures there. We're not affiliated with Netflix. Well, we are affiliated with Netflix. We are one of their biggest customers. So that is our video blog for the week, unless Don has anything he would like to add.
No, I don't think so. We just enjoy this time with you and thank you for listening and being a part of our lives in this way, and we welcome all comments and connections that you might want to pursue with us, including Twitter and Facebook. Thanks again.